Good evening, Valley Middle kids. Tonight we're going to work on determining unit rate. But before we do that, let's go ahead and start with our just for fun question of the day. If the largest Krispy Kreme donut store can produce a maximum of 288,000 donuts per day, and they're open 24/7, how many donuts can they produce in 1 hour? Well, actually, this is a unit rate question that we'll solve when we're all done with our lesson. But officially tonight, our target is 6.2a. I can determine unit rate. Let's do this thing. Find the unit price if it costs $2 for 8 juice boxes and round it to the nearest cent if necessary. All right, well, here's a unit rate question. And I put a bunch of question marks there because, first of all, I'm kind of scratching my head going, what the heck? Unit rate, price per unit? What are they asking for? And I think that's the first thing we really need to do in a unit rate question. Determine what the question is specifically asking for. They want to basically know how much the cost of each unit or each juice box is. So I wasn't really sure how to do this, but I thought if I made a little table here, I could figure it out. So I figured that 8 juice boxes cost $2. That would mean 4 would cost $1, 2 would cost 50 cents, and 1 would cost 25 cents. Then I checked. Does my answer make sense? 25 cents per juice box? Yeah. 4 for $1, 2 for $8, or 8 for $8. 4 for $1, 8 for $2. Yeah, that makes sense. But there's got to be an easier way. And tonight I'm going to show you a process which you can use to efficiently determine the unit rate. Let's get to our vocabulary for the day. First of all, remembering that a rate, that's a ratio that's comparing quantities. That's a ratio. And unit rate, well, that's a rate or ratio that's expressed as a quantity of 1. For example, 80 beats per minute, or 10 miles and 10.5 miles per gallon. Here's some other common unit rates we use. Price per pound, or dollars per hour, along with the other ones that I've already mentioned. Let's try a simple problem together. I drive my truck Big Al 350 miles in 5 hours. How many miles can I drive in 1 hour? Well, if I drive 350 miles in 5 hours and I divide both sides by 5, that'll give me the unit rate of 70 miles per 1 hour, or 70 miles per hour. Okay? That's what we're going to work through tonight. And I have a process, like I said, that'll I think will help you. So, first of all, let's take a look at the question in blue here. Mr. Bartosh drives 400 miles on 8 gallons of gas in his Prism. How many miles per gallon does he get? Well, first of all, figure out what the question is asking for. We need to figure out miles per gallon. And Ms. Carruthers and Ms. Holman and Goldman pointed out, most of the time when you look at the question, it's going to tell you the order in which you put your ratio. Here we want miles per gallon. So I set my ratio up as miles per gallon. I like to think about it as what's my desired ratio? What do I want to get to at the end? That's that gallon piece, that piece there. That's what I put on the right side. Either way I think is going to work if you examine and read the question carefully. So 400 miles to 8 gallons of gas. We've set it up. Next, you divide both sides by this unit that's on the right. So I've got 8 gallons on the right, so I divide that by 8 and divide that by 8. Of course, when you divide this number by itself, you're going to get 1. That's that desired unit rate we want. And then when we divide 400 by 8, we get 50. So we find out that instead of 400 to 8, we've reduced that to 50 to 1. That's a unit rate when it's over 1 unit. Then you need to add the proper label, 50 miles per gallon. And then ask if it makes sense. Well, yeah, if he drives 50 miles per gallon, that would be 100 miles on 2 gallons, and so on. All right? You can check your work too, just by popping it back in. 50 miles per gallon times 8 gallons is 400. All right? That's the nuts and bolts of it. Let's try another example with a little less explanation by myself. Mrs. McKishka buys a 16-ounce bag of candy for $4. How much does the candy cost per ounce? So we got candy per ounce. Okay, so the desired unit rate is this per ounce piece because we want to know per ounce. So that goes over on the right-hand side. And here's the dollars per ounce. So on the right-hand side, we have 16 ounces. So we divide by 16 so that we get that to 1. But we have to do the same thing on the other side because like a fraction, whatever you do to the top, you do to the bottom. Remember that with a ratio, whatever you do to one side to simplify, you need to do the other side as well. So we divide $4 by 16, and you get 0.25 to 1. So if we add the proper label, we can make that 25 cents per ounce. Does it make sense? Yeah, well, 4 ounces then would be $1, and there's a total of 16. You can also just pop it in, 0.25 times those 16 ounces, and you should get $4. All right? I think you're ready to try one on your own. Go ahead. Tara makes $30 in 6 hours. How much money does she make every hour? Go ahead and pause it and give it a shot. All right, let's first of all just slide this down. Make sure you set your ratio up right. Did you set your ratio up like that? If not, why don't you set it up like that and try the problem again? All right, go ahead and get rid of that screen then. So $30 in 6 hours. So I'm going to divide by this unit on the right. 6 divided by 6 gets me down to that 1. And then if I divide 30 divided by 6, I'm going to get 5. Adding the label, that's $5 per hour. Does the answer make sense? Absolutely. $5 times 6 hours is $30. All right, that's a pretty simple problem. I'm pretty confident you got that one right. Why don't you try this one? A little harder. Go ahead and pause it and give it a shot. Okay, Mr. Persons drives 220 miles on 8 gallons of gas. How many miles per gallon did he get? I'm just going to scroll down, make sure you've got yours set up the same way I've got mine set up. 220 miles, 8 gallons. All right, let's see how we did here then. So I'm going to divide by that 8 on both sides. Then that 220 divided by 8 becomes 27.5 to 1. There's my new ratio. If I add that label, that's 27.5 miles per gallon. You'll notice I still have both sides of my ratio there, don't I? All right. Per gallon is per 1 gallon. Okay, I've got 2 other problems that I did. I'm just going to let you take a quick peek at. Give it a shot. All right, let's see if you set it up the right way before we go too much further. All right, and if you divided both sides of that by 40, you've gotten down to 8 to 1. Add the proper labels. That's $8 per hour. $8 times 40 hours, 320. Good job. You are cruising tonight. All right, this one's a little more difficult, but I'd still like you to pause it and give it a shot. All right, Candy Cane buys a 20-ounce bag of candy corn for $3. How much does candy cost per ounce? Did you set yours up like this, your new ratio? All right, did you divide by 20? You did. You'd have got 0.15 to 1 as your new ratio, or your unit rate. Does that make sense? 15 cents per ounce? Yeah, it does. Just check my work. 15 cents per ounce times 20 ounces gives me $30 or $3. All right, you are ready for the ticket to the show. Go ahead and try these 2 problems, determining the unit rate for me. Don't forget to set that up in a ratio. Divide by the right side. Add the labels. All right, back to our original unit rate problem. The Krispy Kreme donut store can produce a maximum of 288,000 donuts per day. How many can they produce in an hour? Well, assuming they make the same number of donuts per hour, and they go nonstop for 24 hours per day, they could make about 12,000 donuts per hour. That is a lot of sugar. Also, kind of a fun fact I found, there are very few varieties of Krispy Kreme donuts that have sprinkles, but the company still manages to use 1.3 million pounds of sprinkles each year. That is a little sprinkling of trivia for you. All right, you like the punny thing there? All right, thanks so much for watching. Have a good evening.